Okay, let's get started. Welcome everyone to day one of Oculus Connect 4. Thanks for being here. My name is Ruth Bram. I've been with Oculus a little over 3 years now as a producer on the studios team. I'm really excited about getting this conversation going with the three amazing panelists who are here with us today. Thank you, guys. Let me introduce you. Chad Dezern is a studio director at Insomniac Games. We're waiting for our slides. 1 minute. I totally know I'm doing this right. I'm a tech person. That's not my slide. Here you go. The computer. OK, great. So Chad Dezern is a studio director at Insomniac Games in North Carolina. His most recent and successful title on our platform, The Unspoken, is a VR action game that pulls players into this hidden world of spell casting and magic duels. It's been around for a while. It's really popular. But let's take a look. Oh, this is so fun. All right. Now take a look. Here we go. In the middle, we have Jenny Huang, who is a senior development director at Sanzaru Games. She's also developed several games with us. She spearheads development on one of our most anticipated titles to come to our platform, Marvel Powers United VR. You may have noticed in the keynote we shared our latest character reveal, but check it out one more time.
Yes! I shall strike you down! My lightning strikes true! This isn't going well for you. Mjolnir, bring down thy wrath!
Awesome. Thor and...
Did not like that!
These two characters are two of my favorite ones to play. It's on the show floor. If you guys haven't tried it out, please check it out. All right, and last but not least, we have John Pearl of Gunfire Games. He's developed 5 games with the studios team. That's pretty impressive, including Dead and Buried, our Western shooter. It's very popular. And most importantly, From Other Suns, which is what we're going to talk about today. It launched its open beta last month. So if you haven't checked it out, please do.
These has got to work.
Maybe this'll help. gonna stop them. Yeah, I didn't stop them.
Whew, that's thrilling. Awesome. So Chad, Jenny, and John have created 3 very different games, all of which are pushing multiplayer gaming and VR forward. So today we're going to dive in a little bit and get their thoughts on what their journey has been like so far and what words of wisdom they can offer us as you continue to create your multiplayer game. So I'd like to start with goals, Chad. You started working on the Unspoken a couple years ago. VR was very different then, yet Unspoken is one of the most popular games on our platform. What were your goals like then, and how have they changed over time?
Our goal when we started was to make it feel amazing to cast spells with your bare hands. Because we saw touch for the first time in 2015, like a lot of people, and immediately we thought, we want to make a spell casting game with this. Let's make it feel really nuanced and impressive, just to use natural movement to make amazing things happen in the world. And when we started developing the game, we reached for our bag of tricks that we've developed for console games over the years. So we made a lot of rocket launchers, we've made a lot of plasma cannons. And so the first thing we did was make spells that immediately hit and connect with your opponent. Like we know that fast cause and effect can feel really good. But what we found was that in a competitive PvP game, even though you want to win, it doesn't really feel good for the opponent to just get like a bolt from the blue that hurts them just like that. So we kind of forced ourselves to slow down a little bit. We took our projectile speed way, way down, even to a place that wasn't really comfortable for us, a place that felt wrong, but it ended up really helping the game. We then introduced a mechanic that lets you reflect the spell back at your opponent, and suddenly it felt a lot better. It felt more like you were making an experience for the other player instead of just constantly dealing immediate damage. So we had to go through the whole process to sort of unlearn something that we'd learned over years of console development, but it ended up with a game that hopefully feels like a magician's duel where you're trying to one-up your opponent.
It absolutely does. I have an incredible time playing Unspoken. So with FOSS, you've also been in development for a couple years now, for a very long time. What were your goals like then, and how have they changed?
We were coming off of Chronos when we started on FOSS, and when we made Chronos, our biggest goal was to make sure we made a game that was comfortable for everyone. That's why we went with the stationary camera, kind of leaning heavily on that. We started out, and at the time, From Other Suns was a very different game. It was more focused on very stationary or very minimal movements, some light movement stuff. Most of the stuff took place on the ship. But the big thing we found as VR grew is that we just keep hearing more and more people. They want to do full locomotion. They want to do full locomotion. But we didn't want to isolate the people that they'd like to do that, but they can't for various reasons of motion sickness. So we really wanted to make sure we made a decision that would just allow everyone to play. We wanted to open it up to the widest amount of people, especially being a multiplayer game. We didn't want to cause like a rift and, not a pun, between like the community of like, oh, these people play in comfort mode, these people play in full locomotion. So that was our biggest thing. We had to find a way to make it all work. So we came up with the full locomotion, and then we also added what we call comfort mode, which allows for, much like a Chronos experience, a stationary camera. You move your character, the camera snaps to it. And I think that was the biggest change, was that introducing that full locomotion, and listening to the community and what they really wanted.
You now have 4 modes, is that right?
Yes.
That's a ton.
Yeah.
But you've seen that they're all helpful for people, and people can stay in multiplayer gaming a little bit longer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we it was actually, we went into the beta we had 2 weeks ago with the full locomotion, the full locomotion and the comfort mode, and we got a great amount of feedback from the people that were playing. They were asking for very specific locomotion modes, so we went ahead and added those. We're showing that here currently to the press. So there's now 3 variations on the advanced Locomotion, which is full Locomotion, and then there's still comfort mode. And then we've added some more basically sliders people can play with for snap turn, smoothing, all those settings. We try to give people as many options as possible because we really don't want to like cut any VR player out of the experience.
Jenny, you had some interesting challenges and design goals also, especially with the richness of characters that are in Powers United VR. What are some of the challenges you faced, and what was that like?
Yes, it's been a real treat actually working on a Marvel franchise. But the characters are just so many characters, and they're all so different. Yeah, and so we had to make sure we embrace all their strengths and weaknesses, but also make a game that's well balanced, caters to a variety of play styles, is fun, and it has to feel heroic. And so a couple of the things that stuck out to us immediately were just the difference in the size of the characters, and also just the differences in their abilities. So for example, you have Hulk, who is big, right? He just towers over everybody.
That's my favorite.
If you haven't checked him out in VR, you just gotta try it out. So he's really big, he towers over everybody. You get in the VR world, and like the environment just feels smaller, you feel a little more cramped, your head is closer to the ceiling as Hulk. You pick up an object in the world, and normally you would just grab it with a full hand, but as Hulk, he kind of picks it up with his little thumb and his index finger, and if he grabs a barrel or a crate, he would crush it. So we basically had to animate different hand poses for the different characters based on their strengths. And so depending on if you're Hulk, we would actually have a different hand pose versus just holding it like a crate. We also had to create different destructible states for the props to deal with that difference. And then if you went into the game as Rocket Raccoon, for example, he is the opposite of Hulk.
Complete opposite, yeah.
So he is tiny, he's a little raccoon. He comes up to maybe Hulk's knees, and he's furry. So you get in the game, you look at your arms, you're like, okay, I got hairy arms. And he's got a little snout just right in front of your face, and it kind of twitches every once in a while. So he's a totally different experience. And you look around the world, and everything's just big to you. You're just looking up at people the whole time. Yeah. And if a melee guy comes up to you, they'll just punch you around. And so what he's got to do is he's got to fly. He's got a jetpack, so he flies up above all the action, and he takes out the enemies with his blasters and his rifles and his grenades. Yeah.
Awesome. So one of the big things that we have to keep in mind when designing multiplayer games is keeping it social. It can be challenging. But you, Chad, have built a really robust community with the Unspoken. How did you do that?
I think it's three things. First, we've released updates to the game about every 4 to 6 weeks since launch. And that's everything from giant new features like new spellcasting classes, to arenas, to new artifacts, to weekend events and tournaments. Just something to keep the player community interested with something new and surprising, maybe even at a cadence that's a lot denser than what they might have expected. The second is that we try to respond ridiculously fast to any imbalance or tuning changes that need to happen. We're fortunate to have a really vocal community of players who let us know exactly how everything is working on Discord minutes after
really
playing
key,
it.
Right?
It's key. I mean, we would not be able to make the right decision about the game for our high-level players if left to our own devices, because it took about a week for our player community to surpass us. Even though I thought, well, I've got a year head start, I'm actually going to be good at this for a while. It was over so quickly. I can't believe how lame I am now, and how quickly everybody started destroying me in the arena, despite the fact that I should have had insider knowledge that would let me win. But no, in fact, our player community is way better. So this group of players finds things that we wouldn't be able to see otherwise. Now, we do have a QA team who are excellent players, and I should give them props. They can find many of these things, but we do have players who are on a level where, if we change a 1/10 value in a spreadsheet, they'll detect the tiny ripple effect that it has on everything in the game and let us know about it. So keeping that alive is about, for us, finding that, reacting to it, and then staying engaged with that community. So it's a back and forth. We oftentimes now will try out a new feature and beta test it, even if it's sort of informally over a weekend, just to hear what everybody thinks about it before we push it into the live game. And I don't know how else we could get that data other than to lean on our players.
Yeah, so the power is in your hands, and that's the way it should be, in my opinion. So good job with that. Jenny, the power of teamwork is really present in your game. In fact, I found it pretty incredible that as a player, I and my teammates can star in our own comic book at the end of the game. How did you come to this decision? It's the only game that I've seen do this.
Well, it's Marvel, right? So
Yeah.
Marvel is definitely known for their comic books. And so, who doesn't like to take a good selfie and put it on social media every once in a while, even if it's in VR, right? So what we do is at the end of a successful mission, players are able to get in a little photo op opportunity with their teammates, and they can get their picture taken, and that picture will appear on the cover of a comic book. And then the player who did the best during that mission would actually get his or her name as the title of the comic book. So that's, it's really fun. And it's a really good opportunity for people to be a little goofy, and they can kind of, pose their superhero pose or flex their VR biceps, or just photobomb your friends and just get something fun on the cover. And we've been playing this game for so long at the studio, and every single time it's like, okay, comic cover time, and take a picture, and we always want to see what we're gonna do. And
You probably have a whole album of the different shots that you've taken.
We've had some really bad photobombs too.
And the score is present too, so at the end you can all see your score in the picture, or is it, you at least see your score at the end, right?
Yeah, the comic cover happens after the result screen, so you
Okay.
see all your scores during the result screen, and then when the comic cover happens, we're actually going to have like a little fun title to go with each character depending on how well they did on the mission, and so that'll show up with you. With the
So how are players rewarded for their teamwork, specifically their teamwork?
So at the start of the mission, we present the player with player objectives, and so they have a set of hero-specific objectives, and then we also have a team objective. And so if you wanted to just go through and play by yourself, that'll be fine, but then you don't actually get to accomplish a team objective. So by doing that, you get awarded more XP at the end of the level. You can also kill enemies by yourself, single-handedly, and be really cool. But then you can also choose to participate with your team and use a different weapon. So for example, if you wanted to throw out a stun grenade instead of just blasting the enemies yourself, you can stun the enemies, and then your teammate can kind of come in and help you out with the final blow. And that way, both of you get awarded extra XP for participating in a team combo. And so with all the extra XP that you get, you could bring it back to your hideout, and we have a little loot crate in our hideout, which gives you a bunch of goodies. So for example, we have different alt costumes for our heroes. So we have Hulk as we all know it, but here at UC4, we revealed Gladiator Hulk, and so that was a costume that you can unlock out of your loot crate. Another thing you can unlock from your loot crate is the comic covers. We have different backgrounds for comic covers, and so you want to keep accumulating all these XPs to get more and more unlocks. And we have a lot of fan service for the Marvel fans, so loot crate is definitely a place where you want to go check out and see what more you can get.
Cool. So John, teamwork is also very apparent, very important in your game. Lots of people can die off really quickly, but you don't let them go away. You keep them in the game, and you have a really interesting way of doing it. You were telling me about the bot unit, set number of lives. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it keeps players in the game?
Yeah. So the big thing with From Other Suns is it's very much a game of attrition. Supplies are limited. You should always, as a even single player or multiplayer, you should kind of feel like the crew of like Firefly or something, where it's just like, oh, just one more job, maybe we can get past this. So supplies are super limited. You're always having to deplete resources to either repair your ship, buy new weapons, upgrade your systems. So every resource is valuable, especially the crew members. So starting out of the game, you get 3 crew members, and basically they're kind of disposable in a way where you're not like picking a character creating, you just kind of jump into a crew member, like, hey, I like the look of that character, I'll jump into that character. And yeah, if you start with 3, you can get rewards basically from completing missions. People will join your ship. You can recruit members in a number of different ways. But once you've run out of human or organic life forms, your game's over and you basically start over. But in multiplayer, we found that number can get depleted really quickly. So we added a bot unit, which is basically if there's no human crew members left, once the person dies, they come back as this kind of, we like to call him a crappy robot. He's meant to be kind of a punishment. He doesn't look super cool. He looks kind of spindly, and he's unable to heal, and he doesn't come with any gear items like a normal crew member would, but it helps keep the players in the game. Originally, we have like a system when you die, you basically go back to the ship and you're looking through the cameras, and that's how you choose your characters. But if there's no characters left, that's really boring to just sit there on the ship as a camera looking around. So to keep people in the game and feel like they're still helping the rest of their team, they can come back as this bot, and then hopefully, as long as one organic crew member remains, you can pick up new ones, and then you could play as them, and then you can get back into the flow.
I think just as important as keeping players in the game is also keeping them comfortable. If you expect players to do a lot of matches or stay in for a longer period of time, it's important that they stay comfortable. And you were telling us a little bit about the 4 different types of locomotion options. Yours is very different, but I don't think it started that way. You have a teleport system, but before it was a little bit different. And how did you come to ending with teleportation?
Well, we tried everything. Like a lot of teams in VR especially, the first thing you do is prototype teleportation, and it's some of the most fun work that there is. It's also a little nerve-wracking because you end up with things that just flat out don't work and that make you feel weird, and it gets terrifying, and we better make something happen fast and see what's going to work for us. I remember we had one that was like shooting a projectile capsule out of your hand, and you could quickly teleport to the point that it was in space, and it felt like this skill-based thing. Like we thought, well, maybe there's something there, but then after we played with it, you kind of want to be able to move with precision and really understand where you're going to move, especially in a game that's about positioning yourself in an arena. So we abandoned it in favor of a point to a location and released teleport scheme. We got there the hard way after trying just about everything else, but ultimately it's a game that's about spellcasting, and luckily teleportation happens to work with that thematically, and we could really play it up as a feature, and it ended up being a major building block for us.
Absolutely, and it's fast too, and I think that's what makes it one of the greatest esports titles that we have, is that you can move swiftly and avoid attacks. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Jenny, yours is kind of a mixture of both. So can you tell us a little bit about some of those differences and what makes it special in Marvel?
Yeah, we definitely had our share of experimenting with different types of movements. In a superheroes, what do you gotta do? You gotta fly, you gotta leap, you gotta jump everywhere. And so what we discovered was that if you're moving the player at a constant, and we don't try to accelerate, decelerate the players in and out of their movement, they tend to not get sick so much. And also if the player is looking at where they're going, so we have like a pointer for where they're teleporting to. They know where they're going, they get there quickly, they don't get sick so much. And so that's been working well for us. And then having these different characters to work with, and we have certain characters who are just ground-based. They teleport point to point on the ground, but they don't get to fly. And then we have other characters who do get to fly. And so, like it goes back into the team building aspect of like, who do you want to bring with you on a mission? And so, for example, we have the demo we're showing here at OC4 is an arena level where you're protecting a shield generator. And so the premise is that you're—
It's a lot of fun, by the way. You should play it if you have a chance.
Yeah, so if you're supposed to protect the shield generator. It's powered down. You've arrived on this planet, and all the enemies are attacking it. And so you got to get the power cells, plug into the shield generator, get it powered up online, protect it, and then once it's charged up, then it'll protect the planet and wipe out the enemies. And so, going into this mission, you go, okay, well, I'm going to bring an offensive guy who is going to just pummel all the enemies. So probably like somebody like Hulk, who's going to run around, destroy all the enemies. And then you're going to bring a defensive person who can maybe put up a shield or a wall around the shield generator and protect it. But then, they might not be so good at dealing with all the flyers and the range enemies up ahead, up floating above their heads. And so you bring in another teammate with you who can fly. And these characters can then take out all the enemies up in the air. And they're also pretty good at retrieving the power cells for you when it comes time for that. And so just thinking about all the different ways that the characters blend and move together has been interesting for our design.
It's really important to find your inner hero, but in different characters, and work as a team, get all the enemies.
Yeah, depending on how you feel that day, you're like, I want to be, the defensive person, or I want to be a flyer.
Yeah, that's a lot of excitement. Can't get bored in that game. So I think looking the role is also just as important as feeling comfortable. Jenny, I remember you telling me once that feeling like a hero is looking and moving like a hero, but you know, IK can be a beast. I saw it put to test when we were at Comic-Con and demoing at the Marvel booth. And we had Hulk playing Hulk and Deadpool playing Deadpool, but they came out of it and they were so excited and they were like, I really felt like Hulk, it was amazing. So you passed, flying colors. I know you're still making a lot of edits, but what were some of the challenges you faced? How did you get to where you are now with the IK challenges?
I mean, with the touch controllers, it's really cool because it's perfect. You get to control the hands and the arms of your heroes, and it feels really immersive, so you really feel like you're the character that you're playing as. You know, like I was saying earlier, when you're playing as Rocky, you look at your hand, like you got furry arms, and I don't look like that every day. So it definitely makes you believe that you're that character. So that's really cool. But then from a third-person perspective, if we just kept all the IK control on the character, then all our heroes end up looking, you know, perhaps like a little stagnant like this, right? Like people might just play the game holding the controller directly in front of them, and none of our shoulders are as wide as Hulk's. And so then what we saw was that a lot of the heroes are just running around looking like this, and they weren't very heroic at all, and so that was a problem. And so what we decided to do was in first person, we had to maintain that IK control so that people can feel like they are the hero that they selected. But from the third person perspective, we had to allow animation to blend in so that they can't get that heroic view. And so for example, if we detected no controller input on the grip or the trigger buttons, then we just we let the animation blend in and take over. And so if they're just pressing forward on a stick to run forward, instead of running forward like this, they're like running forward with like a heroic, you know, swing of the arms, just like you would expect from a superhero game. Yeah. Likewise, if they were teleporting or jumping somewhere, we don't want them to jump like this. So we want them to have this, you know, heroic like start, loop, and end to their leap. And so that's where animation blends in. But at the same time, we don't want to completely take away all the IK control from all the third-person interactions, because it is still a social game. We want multiplayer feedback. And so what we did was we detected when a player would raise their arm above a certain height, and if that happened, we would actually allow the IK to blend back in again over the animation. So for example, I can run up to you in a game and raise my arm, and my character actually raised my arm too, and then we could give each other a high five as we pass by each other. And so that's sort of our little compromise as to how we make the characters feel heroic, but still, you know, keep interaction.
Well, it looks really good. Like I said, it passed the test with some of the biggest Marvel fans there is, so congrats on that.
Thank you.
It also took a while for you to perfect IK and Unspoken. What were your challenges like? Were they similar to Jenny's?
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things to grapple with, and our first attempt at dealing with IK was to not have it. So we had a scheme early on. There's still videos circulating with this look, but we passed through data from the player's head and hands with a complete one-to-one. So you saw all of the jitters of human movement, and we put a Havoc cloth-driven cloth sim over top of it. And you know, it was kind of a cool look. Like the person would move, you would see secondary motion from the cloth. We liked it in some ways. I mean, the problem is, like, avatars ended up looking like, do you remember Orca from He-Man? Do you know that character? Just like basically just a cloak with eyes, or like a Jawa. I mean, it had its appeal. I like Jawas, but something was missing. We really wanted to give players the ability to determine what they look like and kind of inhabit that body a lot more, and you know, like look in the mirror and see something that's really compelling. So we ended up a disturbing number of short weeks before launch, moving over to a full body IK system that has some similarities to the system that Jenny's describing, where we pass through the head and hands data, but we also use partial animations and blends to make sure that the full body's doing something that's pretty good, that's got a good silhouette, that's got a good pose. We always defer to what the player's doing. Like we want, when you see your opponent, to see that opponent accurately represented in terms of what they're throwing or what they're doing, because that helps you react to them. But as far as their body goes, it's not just you know, jittering along with their head and hands. It's actually in an animator described position that's made to look good with that particular set of poses. We're just taking 3 data points and making a full suite of cool looking poses around those.
Oh, it looks great. You know, you've perfected it to the hill. Are you still making edits, or is it kind of done now?
We're always making edits. Yeah, I mean, there's still stuff that we want to do and clean up, but yeah, we're happy that we got the full body in just under the wire before we launched.
Cool. So in a few minutes, I want to open it up to Q&A. So if you guys want to start making your way to the microphones to ask questions, please do so right now. But before we do that, I want to talk about design and input. So Chad, the unspoken, has now crossed the line. It's very difficult to do into the esports world, and it's been a huge success. We've witnessed incredible matches from players around the world. Why is it such a success? What happens with the design and the input that makes it that way?
I think it's because we designed the game with depth, and that was one of our rallying cries from the early going. We wanted it to feel like we imagined it would feel to learn Magic, where there are always other doors to open or like a rabbit hole to go down in terms of your skill level. So we ended up with a high skill cap and a lot to learn. We tried to hit it on 3 levels. There's the strategy of what you choose to go into the arena with beforehand. There's the like in-arena moment of skillfully using good timing and positioning to cast a spell. And then there's the tactic of what you reach for. That's a reaction to what your opponent is doing. And in the early going, we see players get good at one of those things or the other, but our high-level players are good at all 3 of those things. And it just means there's always more to learn. The game's dominant strategies change. Every single day, the community will be, all abuzz about a new way to win, but then somebody will find a counter to it, and it's just this evolving thing that's kind of out of our hands at this point. We're surprised by what people figure out and what happens, things we never could have conceived of when we started. So I think it's just the fluid nature of it and the fact that there are big momentum shifts. People can get down and it looks like this player's going to lose, but miraculously you almost see the adrenaline kick in, and suddenly there's amazing focus and they're playing perfectly, and they come back and they win, and it's always a surprise. Like the outcome is very hard to predict.
Yeah. What I noticed is that it's very easy for people to pick it up and get playing really quickly. But for the more advanced players, there's a lot of subtleties that allow them to, really kick butt. So it caters to all levels of players, and I think that's one of the reasons why it has done so well as well. John, there's a lot of space to explore from Other Suns. And so people can navigate, they have to just find their way around, which can be daunting in a lot of games if it's not done right. But you've done it right. What's your motto?
It's definitely not my motto. It's something I've always heard of and related to UI design specifically, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Early on, we tried to make really complex and cool UIs that felt real snappy and just lots of stuff going on. And almost right away, we realized it's too much. It's like the player gets lost in navigating these panels. So we kind of went away from like the real complex, a lot of doodads, and made it very simple. We call it a Duplo approach to it. It's not Lego size, it's Duplo size for a lot of our interface, because the worst thing, especially we found this throughout the project, the worst thing is doing something in VR and then it not reacting the way you expect or the way it reacted last time. And that was prevalent all through our interface stuff of like, I pressed that button, did it press or did it not? And did I miss it? And so one of the solutions was to make things bigger, make them clearer, we revamped like a lot of the really early UI stuff to make it very simple, very readable. Tried to find ways to, both for localization and for just readability in VR, try to reduce the amount of words involved. Like a lot of our stations now have just images that represent what they do. Like the gun recharge station has a picture of a gun with like a recharge symbol, as opposed to before it used to say gun recharge station. So cutting those things out kind of helps, because then you don't have to read it. You just like, oh, I understand that symbol. It's super easy to understand that. It doesn't require localization. It's very universal. We try to find as many times as we can to use images to kind of convey what to do, and then making sure it's very clear what a button is and what a feedback node is, basically. If a bar needs to charge, it needs to not look like a button, and then the button needs to look like it's a button, kind of thing. There's a lot of that, and again, it's just like keep it simple, stupid. It's like don't over design the UI and for the sake of making it look really cool. Just you want to get people in there, you want them touching the buttons and getting the response they expect.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I see 2 questions. Before we get into them, do you guys have any last thoughts that you'd like to share on anything?
Well, just a quick one. If there are any developers out there thinking about making a live game that has updates that involve the community, you know, we went into this thing kicking and screaming in some ways, but now having done it for a while, I'd recommend it. Like, we're really in now to the rush of making a change and then like the next afternoon or the next morning, because you know the Oculus Store is really nice and seamless to upload changes to. To get that immediate response is brand new for us. We're so accustomed to, we finish a game and then we wait a couple months before we see the reaction. Now we do a thing and we hear feedback right away, and it's awesome. It feels like live TV or something. It's just a cool new way to work.
That's awesome. Okay, I think I saw you first, so please.
I'm Mady. I work on a game called To the Top. Thanks for the talk. I was wondering, how do you keep an active player base so people can find matches as much as possible?
Maybe you, Chad?
Sure. So we rely on our Discord channel, which was a homegrown effort from our player community. And our players do a great job of calling out times when everybody's going to be there to jump into a match. And we supplement that on the developer side with Play with Devs events every single week. It's always Wednesday at 4 o'clock, so please come in and join us. But we're always there to jump into a match. And our community does a really good job of kind of managing that, taking it off of our hands. So if a new player's coming in and they want to learn, they make sure there are plenty of other people for them to jump in against. And you know, coupled with all that, luckily our player base is such that you can jump in and find the match quickly since it's a 1v1 game. So just all those things working together.
Thanks.
Cool. You, sir?
Hey, I'm Mike. I'm working on a game called Core Disruption. So these games look really awesome. Can't wait to try them out later. So I had a question involving testing of the game with multiplayer. How did you go about testing the game with a lot of players? Because everybody needs a VR headset on. You need to make sure that everything runs smoothly in the headset as well. So I was just wondering, how did you all go about the strategies of doing that?
John, you most recently went through this, so.
Yeah, for us, we have an internal QA team. The people making the game obviously have the VR headsets, so they're able to jump in. We'll get like matches going in the office, like, hey, jump in this game with me. Let's see what's going on. And then we actually have an external QA group. But it's funny because a lot of that stuff, even for very professional QA folks, I think they even get into the rut of, hey, I know what to do. I know these things. And the open beta was pretty revealing on a couple huge bugs that nobody saw early on with just some of the matchmaking stuff. So that was probably the biggest thing, is getting putting it out there and saying, hey, this isn't a finished game. Have fun with it. Let us know what's going on. We had a Discord channel as well. That's where we got a lot of our feedback and a lot of any kind of bugs or any kind of issues that people were having. And we tried to work with them through there. But that was the biggest thing, is getting it out in like the open beta format was huge for us, because it exposed a lot of stuff that, just because it's a much bigger, like, we're not going to have that many QA people. The amount of people playing the beta was no astronomical amount of people more than what we had internally or even externally for our QA staff. So getting real world data was huge.
So how were you able to get everybody into sessions at once? Like, did you have the QA team just go into a room and have them spread out on different computers, different devices to test out the game?
In normal QA, yeah, we have, internally we have 3 QA folks that they'll fire up a game. They have their own little room that's where their desks are. So they play at their desks. We also set up we did this during Dead and Buried. We set up basically a 4-player system of 4 TVs that kind of face away from each other, and 4 systems and 4 Oculuses. And we just have people jump in and play that over and over again. And they would always connect to each other and then kind of test from there.
Cool, thank you.
I was going to say, for us, we also have internal testers, and as we get close to demos and shipping, we also work with an external tester. But what we do is we actually set up our own server in-house, and so anybody can just hop in on a server, check in your stuff, hop in on the server, and just test your work over the network. which is highly encouraged because the results from any sort of network play is totally different from what you would see at your desk by yourself. It's like it works at my desk, it doesn't work on a network. So with server, internal server definitely helps. And then what we started doing recently too was we were calling it the Marvel experience, where every day we would round up 4 people in the office and just get them playing the game. Like people who don't normally play the game very often, we're just like pluck them from their desk and be like, you're coming in for the Marvel experience. And so we set up these multiplayer games and just drag people in to play with us. And so that's been really helpful in terms of like difficulty tuning. So I mean, I find that I end up playing the game constantly, and I'm always playing with the designers and the same people, and we're like, this is too easy. And then we come here and we're like, oh no, people are dying. And so it's been really helpful. And the other thing we do is we have a really easy build system, and so we're able to just pretty much by running one bat file that anybody can run sitting on the desktop, we could flip over a new build and put it up on the Amazon server, and anybody could just jump in, download the game from the Oculus store, jump in our little internal channel, and just play the game that way.
Cool. I saw you next, and then I promise I'll get to you.
Hi, I'm Costas from Rogue Sun. We're making a game called Tin Hearts. I was wondering, with regards to latency, specifically, what new issues you discovered compared to, say, screen games that you might have worked on previously, and also with regards to any melee combat elements where there's kind of less time to react. And I guess that's more of a question for you, Jenny, because you guys kind of deal mostly with ranged combat. Again, does latency become more of an issue there, and what strategies, if any, you came up with to tackle that issue?
I mean, with latency, a lot of that comes from just network and things like that. We try to just stay on top of performance all the time. We kind of found, I guess it could be a little bit of a cheat. We kind of found that, a lot of times people are so focused on what they're doing and what they're doing in the first person view, they don't actually notice what's happening in third person. And so, like there is gonna be some latency, but people don't know that. Like you're shooting things, you're beating up the enemies, they're dying, and people don't notice that, oh, that was, like I jumped there and then somebody else saw the animation happen a second later. Like they don't really catch on to that. And I think it benefits us because we are such a fast-paced game that we're able to kind of slide by in that sense. So
we have time for 2 more questions. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tony. I'm CEO of a company called Marvelous. We just submitted a game, VR esports game, in the Rift Store. So your insights and sharing is very helpful for developers like us. I have a question. What are the best channels or offline platforms that you think is best for building up the communities for a VR like multiplayer game?
Our community took matters into their own hands, which is awesome, and what we hoped for, and they went to Discord, and that means that everybody's chatting in real time, and there's a record of conversations, and we'll check at 10 a.m. and find that there are 1,000 messages since the previous night, and we have a tuning change that we need to make really quickly. It's really, really good for that. It just keeps everybody engaged. Within Discord, our community set up a number of channels, so it's focused on different topics about the game. And we've ended up partnering with some of our community members to administrate. So we have a few trusted people who keep an eye on everything, and we have developer tags, so we're in there chatting with them and just really staying on top of everything that comes up, answering questions, getting the word out when we're doing events or when we have something to share. We also have a Reddit that tends to be really active as well. It's just, these 2 things just have different contexts and formats. I mean, I think they complement each other pretty well, but the Discord's been kind of a godsend in a lot of ways.
That's awesome. I wonder if there is an offline organization or club like for VR esports developers and players so that they can play offline together.
I don't know if there is one yet, but there should be. We should make one.
Yeah, maybe we should make one together.
Yeah, cool.
Hi, I'm Rob, designer at Ready at Dawn. I'm curious how you guys, it's probably a little bit more for the unspoken, Chad. How do you balance your high-tier players that you were talking about and kind of making sure that the game suits them while still attracting new players and trying to keep that player base fed with new folks coming in?
Yeah, it's trying to hit different layers of complexity so that the new player experience can be about learning to do one thing really well, and you can have some success in a match with that. The high-level play experience is about making sure that all of the elements work really well together, that every class's play style has something that lets it effectively win. We take telemetry data, we watch it like hawks, just to make sure that everything is balanced within a reasonable fraction of a percentage, to make sure that no one class is dominant or no one spell is getting used over and over. We just can't have enough data about that. But it's just about having, I think, enough elements in the system where it can handle both of those situations reasonably well. And when we are at a decision point, hopefully we're not in a position where we have to decide, okay, we're going to make this change. It's going to be great for high-level players, but new-level players are now going to get murdered the minute they step in the arena. I mean, usually we're saying, okay, this is going to be good for the entire player base because we're managing it with this technique. We try not to go too far in either direction, in other words. It's tough, but it's the main thing we talk about and do at this point.
I can relate. Awesome. Thanks.
Okay, thank you all so much for coming. Please play Unspoken. Please play Marvel's Powers United VR on the show floor today. Download From Other Suns when you get home. These are awesome games. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you have additional questions for the panelists, please meet them outside in the hall. Thanks. Thank you.